Unlimited Void. Unlimited Void is the domain expansion used by Satoru Gojo and later by Yuta Okkotsu after taking over Gojo's body. The domain immerses its targets within the Limitless technique, resembling an infinite void similar to outer space, with a massive black hole, distant galaxies, and glowing white patches scattered across its vast expanse. The core of Unlimited Void is its overwhelming effect on the target's mind, bombarding them with an immense flood of raw information. This sensory overload incapacitates the target, causing total immobilization as they perceive and experience everything simultaneously. However, Gojo and anyone in physical contact with him are immune to this effect, creating a potential loophole for opponents to exploit. Gojo first uses Unlimited Void to effortlessly overpower Jogo's domain, demonstrating its superiority. During the Shibuya Incident, he briefly activates the domain for just 0.2 seconds, incapacitating a large crowd by flooding their minds with 6 months of information in an instant without causing brain damage. In his fight with Sukuna, Gojo shows his mastery by modifying the domain. He can shrink it to the size of a basketball and reinforce its outer layer while weakening the inner one. After Okkotsu takes over Gojo's body, he briefly uses the domain against a reincarnated Sukuna, showcasing its immense power. Malevolent Shrine. Malevolent Shrine, Ryomen Sukuna's domain expansion, epitomizes his terrifying power and cruelty. It manifests a grotesque landscape centered on a disfigured Buddhist shrine, with its entrances resembling gaping mouths filled with human-like teeth and tongues, reflecting Sukuna's macabre essence. The domain's guaranteed hit ability unleashes relentless slashing attacks, reducing anything within its range to dust. Sukuna employs two slashing techniques: Cleave, which adaptively targets beings with cursed energy, and Dismantle, a more indiscriminate attack for inanimate objects and general destruction. These attacks persist until Sukuna disengages the domain or becomes too injured to maintain it. Uniquely, Sukuna can expand his domain without enclosing it in a barrier, introducing a binding vow that offers escape routes to enemies. In exchange, the attack range grows significantly, reaching a destructive radius of nearly 200 meters. This open barrier technique maximizes his destructive capabilities, as first seen against a finger bearer and later during the Shibuya Incident, where Sukuna obliterates city blocks and kills hundreds. In his battle with Gojo Satoru, Sukuna uses Malevolent Shrine 3 times, demonstrating the ability to adjust its parameters for greater power. After temporarily losing the domain, Sukuna restores it by landing consecutive black flashes, unveiling a new form with a 99-second limit, showcasing his resilience and ingenuity. And Chimera Shadow Garden. Chimera Shadow Garden is Megumi Fushiguro's incomplete domain expansion, transforming the environment into a surreal, shadow-filled landscape with a negative color palette. The domain floods the area with fluid, abyss-like shadows, allowing Megumi to summon multiple Shikigami simultaneously and exert advanced control over all available shadows. Inside the domain's enclosed barrier, targets are trapped in a liquid shadow abyss, requiring cursed energy to maintain footing. The shadows offer no buoyancy, resistance, or oxygen, making it a lethal trap for unprepared opponents. As an incomplete domain, Chimera Shadow Garden lacks a true barrier or guaranteed hit effect, forcing Megumi to activate it in enclosed spaces where the environment acts as a substitute barrier. Despite its limitations, the domain significantly amplifies Megumi's 10 Shadows technique, pushing it beyond its usual potential. He first uses it to defeat a finger bearer through a combination of Shikigami and Shadow clones. Later, during the battle with Dagon, Megumi activates the domain to counter Horizon of the captivating Skandha, allowing his allies to escape. In the culling game, Megumi completes the domain, boosting his technique to 120% and ultimately overcoming Reggie Star. Coffin of the Iron Fortress. Coffin of the Iron Fortress is the domain expansion of the disaster curse, Jogo. This domain creates a deadly volcanic environment with an enclosed stone chamber, large fissures in the walls, and molten magma seeping from the ground. The extreme heat inside would instantly combust any average Jujutsu sorcerer who enters. Jogo's guaranteed hit ability allows him to manipulate the volcanic surroundings, launching molten rock attacks with pinpoint accuracy, making it a lethal trap for most opponents. Jogo uses this domain against Satoru Gojo, but Gojo's Limitless curse technique makes him immune to the domain's effects. Gojo easily overpowers the domain with his own domain expansion. Despite its defeat, Coffin of the Iron Fortress remains a highly lethal technique, capable of being a one-shot kill for most characters. Gojo's dominance in the encounter highlights his overwhelming strength rather than any weakness in Jogo's domain. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share it with your fellow anime fans, and hit the subscribe button to join our community. Let's continue. Horizon of the Captivating Skandha. Horizon of the Captivating Skandha is the domain expansion of the disaster curse Dagon. Upon activation, triggered by a specific hand sign or cursed seal on his stomach, the area transforms into a serene yet deadly tropical paradise. The domain features a peaceful beach, a dense palm forest, and an infinite ocean, creating a striking contrast between beauty and danger. The domain's guaranteed hit ability is fueled by Dagon's aquatic Shikigami, fish-like entities that materialize instantly from the target's perspective and strike upon appearing. Their unique manifestation makes them nearly impossible to block or evade, overwhelming even skilled opponents. Initially, Dagon uses the domain as a refuge for the disaster curses while in his cursed womb form. Its full destructive potential is revealed during his battle with Nanami, Maki, and others, who are relentlessly attacked by the aquatic Shikigami. The tide turns when Megumi Fushiguro creates an escape route for Toji Zenin to enter. Toji quickly destroys Dagon and the domain in a brutal battle, eradicating the curse. This domain highlights Dagon's aquatic abilities, blending stunning visuals with deadly precision. Self-Embodiment of Perfection. Self-Embodiment of Perfection is Mahito's domain expansion, creating a dark, oppressive space surrounded by interlocking arms resembling a giant clasped flower. Within this domain, Mahito's idol transfiguration becomes overwhelmingly lethal, allowing him to reshape souls directly without physical contact through a guaranteed hit effect. Mahito first activates the domain against Kento Nanami, intending to kill him. However, Yuji Itadori forcefully enters the domain, unintentionally involving Sukuna, whose connection to Yuji's soul triggers a devastating counterattack. Sukuna's retaliation shatters the domain, saving Nanami. Mahito later uses Self-Embodiment of Perfection against Kokichi Muta Mechamaru, but Kokichi neutralizes it using a simple domain, negating its effects. Inspired by observing Satoru Gojo's ability to use a domain for only 0.2 seconds, Mahito refined this technique. During his fight with Yuji and Aoi Todo, Mahito briefly activates the domain, successfully transmuting Todo's arm. Todo quickly amputates it, preventing further damage. Mahito's ingenuity and growth through Self-Embodiment of Perfection reflect his terrifying adaptability, establishing him as one of the most formidable threats in Jujutsu Kaisen. Graveyard Domain. Graveyard Domain is the unofficial name for the domain expansion of the smallpox deity, a special grade curse. Upon activation, it traps the target within a graveyard surrounded by a dense forest, creating an eerie and oppressive atmosphere. The domain's guaranteed hit immediately ensnares the target inside a coffin. The smallpox deity then performs a ritualistic motion, lowering its left fist into its right hand, summoning a massive gravestone that crushes the coffin, dealing significant damage and burying it underground. Following this, the curse initiates a countdown from 3. If it reaches 1, the target becomes infected with smallpox, leading to their death. The graveyard domain is seen only once, during the battle against Mei Mei and her brother, Ui Ui. Mei Mei is trapped in the coffin and buried, but manages to escape before the countdown finishes. Ui Ui is later caught, but counters the curse with a simple domain, allowing Mei Mei to strike down the smallpox deity, dispelling the domain and ending the battle. Although brief, the graveyard domain highlights the smallpox deity's deadly power and terrifying design as a special grade curse. Deadly Sentencing. Deadly Sentencing is Hiromi Higuruma's unique, non-lethal domain expansion that transforms the area into a courtroom, where a trial takes place. Unlike most domains, it doesn't rely on a guaranteed hit attack. Instead, it enforces a binding vow, compelling adherence to Higuruma's curse technique. In this domain, Higuruma acts as the prosecutor, while the target becomes the defendant. The trial is presided over by Judgment, a Shikigami who knows everything about those involved but doesn't share this information with Higuruma, ensuring fairness. The trial begins with Judgment announcing the charges based on the defendant's actual crimes. The defendant can confess, deny, or remain silent, aiming to secure a verdict of innocence. Higuruma, as prosecutor, presents evidence and a rebuttal. After both sides present their arguments, Judgment delivers a lawful verdict. If guilty, the defendant faces punishment, often the confiscation of their curse technique. If the defendant doesn't confess, they can request a retrial, which cannot be denied. When Yuji Itadori was tried, His cursed energy was confiscated, and after a retrial, he was sentenced to death. The death sentence grants Higuruma the Executioner's Sword, a weapon that kills instantly. This domain emphasizes mental strategy and justice, using trials to weaken opponents and highlight Higuruma's tactical skill. Time Cell Moon Palace. Time Cell Moon Palace is a powerful domain expansion used by Naoya, creating a surreal, black, empty environment with only a few floating particles and a central stage. The domain features a long, flesh-like path leading to a large, unblinking eye behind the caster. The core of the domain's auto-hit function forces anyone within it to follow the rule of 24 frames per second, causing severe injuries with every movement that violates this strict rule. The domain targets the victim's body down to the cellular level, freezing individual cells and creating painful cuts, gashes, and gas bubbles. Anyone who attempts to move risks extreme strain, potentially resulting in severed limbs. As the target tries to move, the precision of the curse technique intensifies, making it increasingly dangerous for those who cannot adhere to the 24 frames per second rule. Naoya first uses Time Cell, Moon Palace, during his battle with Maki Zenin, Hagana Daido, and Rokujushi Miyo. He traps Daido and Miyo inside the domain, causing them to suffer painful injuries as they fail to follow the movement rule. However, Maki, being cursed energy less at the time, is immune to the domain's effects. She exploits this weakness and kills Naoya, ending the battle. Three-Fold Affliction. Three-Fold Affliction is the domain expansion of the ancient sorcerer Yorozu. When expanded, this domain creates a vast, mostly empty space, with several large organic structures floating within it. These structures resemble the disembodied brains and ventral nerve cords of insects. The domain's guaranteed hit effect specifically targets items that Yorozu constructs. Near the end of her battle with Sukuna, Yorozu activates her domain after creating her most powerful weapon, the True Sphere. She opens the domain to ensure the sphere makes contact with the King of Curses, but hesitates before activating her curse technique. Sukuna counters by summoning Maharaja, who shatters the True Sphere with his Sword of Extermination. As Yorozu watches in shock, Maharaja strikes her down, causing her domain to collapse. Womb Profusion. Womb Profusion is a domain expansion used by Kenjaku, though it is believed to have originally belonged to Kaori Itadori before Kenjaku took over her body. When expanded, this domain manifests as a grotesque totem pole-like tower made up of spirit-like faces that are grotesquely fused together. The domain's can't-miss attack releases an explosive, invisible force, the exact nature of which remains unclear. Much like Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine, Womb Profusion is expanded into the surrounding airspace rather than being confined within a traditional barrier. Due to this lack of a solid outer shell, the domain cannot be easily dispelled or dismantled. Kenjaku took advantage of Yuki Tsukumo's hesitation to activate her own domain and expanded his without closing the barrier. The curse technique embedded in Womb Profusion is extraordinarily powerful, easily stripping Yuki's domain of its integrity within moments. Without a well-defined outer barrier, Tengen struggled to target and break down Kenjaku's domain. Womb Profusion's guaranteed hit capability severely injured Yuki with a devastating wave of intense gravity. Authentic Mutual Love. Authentic Mutual Love is the domain expansion of Yuta Okkotsu. When activated, it creates a desolate landscape filled with wrecked cross-shaped structures and scattered katanas. The domain allows Yuta to select a previously copied curse technique to imbue into its barrier, granting it a guaranteed hit effect that varies depending on the chosen technique. In addition, other curse techniques are randomly imbued into the katanas throughout the domain, with each sword containing a different technique. Yuta is the only one who can activate the techniques, but he does not know which technique is in which katana until he picks it up. Each katana can be used only once before being destroyed, but there is an unlimited number scattered around the domain. Yuta first uses his domain against Ryu Ishigori and Kuro Rushi, though the conflicting domains and interference from Kuro Rushi cause them to collapse before they are fully formed. Yuta fully demonstrates his domain's power during his battle with Sukuna. He uses his stockpile techniques to pressure Sukuna, forcing him to maintain Hollow Wicker Basket to counter the domain's effects. However, Sukuna eventually destroys Yuta's domain with a world-cutting slash. Yuji's domain expansion. Yuji's domain expansion, which was recently revealed in the manga, currently lacks an official name. Expanding the domain seems to transport the target to an empty train station. Within this space, Yuji appears to be completely healed of any previous injuries, though it may be an illusion cast by the domain on the target's mind rather than a physical healing effect. As with other domain expansions, Yuji's domain likely incorporates a sure hit condition. Inside this domain, Yuji's innate technique, Dismantle, is greatly amplified, allowing him to land high-octane black flashes and deliver soul-splitting, dismantling attacks one after another. This powerful surge of energy ultimately enables him to defeat the King of Curses and free his friend Megumi from Sukuna's control. However, despite the thrilling climax of Yuji's final battle with Sukuna, we're left with lingering questions. Akutami-sensei never fully explained how Yuji's domain works, nor did he reveal its name in the manga. Fans were hoping for more clarity, especially in the epilogue section, but for now, the mystery remains unsolved. What do you think Yuji's domain is capable of? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Bye, and I'll catch you in the next video.